기도의 불이 타오르게 하라. 성령의 불이 타오르게 하라. 하나님의 군대를 부르라. 여호와로 일하시게 하라. 기도의 불이 타오르게 하라. 성령의 불이 타오르게 하라. 하나님의 군대를 부르라. 여호와로 일하시게 하라. 성령의 불이 타오르게 하라. 하나님의 군대를 부르라. 여호와로 일하시게 하라. 기도의 불이 타오르게 하라. 성령의 불이 타오르게 하라. 하나님의 군대를 부르라. 여호와로 일하시게 하라. 하늘의 군대를 부르라. 여호와로 일하시게 하라. 하늘의 군대를 부르라. 여호와로 일하시게 하라.
사랑합니다. 어제보다 오늘 더 주를 사랑합니다. 주 사랑합니다. 어제보다 오늘 더 사랑합니다. 주 사랑합니다. 어제보다 오늘 더 주를 사랑합니다. 주 사랑합니다. 어제보다 오늘 더 사랑합니다. 성소에서 거리에서 광야에서 깊은 골짜기에서 기쁠 때도 슬플 때도 주님만 사랑합니다. 사랑합니다. 주 주님만을 사랑합니다. 어제보다 오늘 더 주를 사랑합니다. 주 사랑합니다. 어제보다 오늘 더 사랑합니다. 주 사랑합니다. 어제보다 오늘 더 주를 사랑합니다. 주 사랑합니다. 어제보다 오늘 더 사랑합니다. 성소에서 거리에서 광야에서 깊은 골짜기에서 기쁠 때도 슬플 때도 주님만 사랑합니다. 성소에서 거리에서 광야에서 깊은 골짜기에서 기쁠 때도 슬플 때도 주님만 사랑합니다. 성소에서 거리에서 광야에서 깊은 골짜기에서 기쁠 때도 슬플 때도 주님만 사랑합니다. 주님만 사랑합니다. 주님만 사랑합니다. 밤이나 낮이나 어제나 오늘도 영원히 주만 찬양해. 괴롭고 슬플 때 낭망하여 넘어져도 언제나 주만 찬양하겠네. 밤이나 낮이나 어제나 오늘도 영원히 주만 찬양해. 괴롭고 슬플 때 낭망하여 넘어져도 언제나 주만 찬양하겠네. 주님만 언제나 주만 찬양하겠네. 모든 이름 위에 뛰어나신 이름, 왕의 왕 예수께 엎드려 경배해. 모든 이름 위에 뛰어나신 이름, 왕의 왕 예수께 손들고 경배해. 모든 이름 위에 뛰어나신 이름, 왕의 왕 예수께 엎드려 경배해. 모든 이름 위에 뛰어나신 이름, 왕의 왕 예수께 손들고 경배해. 줄 경배해, 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 주 경배해, 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 경배해. 주님만이 왕이십니다. 주님만이 왕이십니다. 주님만이 왕이십니다. 주님만 왕이십니다. 주님만이 왕이십니다. 주님만이 왕이십니다. 주님만이 왕이십니다. 주님만이 왕이십니다. 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 오직 주님만이 왕이십니다. 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 주님만 모든 이름 위에 뛰어나신 이름 왕의 왕 예수께 엎드려 경배해 모든 이름 위에 뛰어나신 이름 왕의 왕 예수께 손들고 경배해 모든 이름 위에 뛰어나신 이름 왕의 왕 예수께 엎드려 경배해 모든 이름 위에 뛰어나신 이름 왕의 왕 예수께 손들고 경배해 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 경배
사랑하는 기도 동역자 여러분 평안하셨습니까? 7월입니다. SWM 선교회는 매해 7월부터 그 다음에 6월까지 회계연도가 진행되는 여러분의 교회나 회사와는 약간 다른 구조를 가지고 저희들은 이제 막 연말 계획들을 다 마치고 새해를 맞이했습니다. 7월의 현장 이슈로 여러분에게 소개하는 우리 귀한 선교사님 가정이 있습니다. 터키 디야르바크르에서 오랫동안 사역하신 제리 그리고 사라 매틱스 선교사님 가정을 여러분께 오늘 소개하고 싶습니다. 마침 미국을 여행하시면서 동역하는 동역자들과 동역교회를 방문하신 두 분을 오늘 SWM 선교회 NIM 오피스에 모시게 되었습니다. 두 분의 이야기를 좀 듣고 어떻게 하나님 나라를 먼저 선택한 그런 선교사의 삶을 사시게 되었는지 저희가 한번 듣고 또 하나님께서 터키와 중동에서 어떻게 일하시는지 우리가 한번 들으면서 우리가 살고 있는 이 시대가 어떤 시대인가 우리가 한번 다시 한번 생각하는 그런 귀한 시간 갖기를 원합니다. Hey Jerry and Sarah,
Hi.
it's good to meet you again.
Thank you. We're privileged to be with you.
Yeah, I remember my first visit in Diyarbakir, and I still remember the guest room, the behind the church.
Oh, right.
There's a small guest room, so Peter and I, we have a privilege to stay there for a few days.
Okay.
And it was a wonderful.
Okay.
And it was a first church in Diyarbakir, and I have a chance to visit you the next day in your new office.
Oh, right.
You remember?
That's right,
In the
remember.
new city?
Right.
Yeah, so I visited and you show me the cross the street building, there is a AK party,
Right.
Diyarbakir branch.
Right.
That surprised me too.
Right.
So I have a very good feeling. And always when I visit to Turkey, I remember my friends in Turkey. And Jerry and Sarah, you are the one of the biggest friend in Turkey.
Well, thank you,
for
Ron.
us.
Thank you.
But unfortunately, Turkish government doesn't allow you stay in Turkey in 2013, I think.
Right.
And you pray. I know you pray a lot. You pray, and finally you decide to move into North Cyprus.
Right.
Yeah, it was about 15, 16 years after you become a missionary in Turkey, right?
Right. That's correct.
Okay. Jerry and Sarah, I heard that you are MK, missionary kids, both of them.
That's right.
And tell us about your story and your family story so we could see what you did for the last years.
Yes.
Jerry, why don't you start with you?
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, those first few years of my life were very instructive. My father went to Bolivia, South America, as a missionary when he was young, 19 years old.
Wow.
And later married, took my mom down, and all 5 of us siblings were born in Bolivia. And so I have dual citizenship. And, you know, I think it's a testimony to my mother and father and their faithfulness to the Lord and their love for God and for our family that all of us, with the exception of my one brother, have ended up on the mission field as well. So they really instilled upon us a great passion for God's work. And so when I went to Bible college in Dubuque, Iowa, Emmaus Bible College, I already had the desire to go and serve God overseas. But of course, my whole focus was South America because I speak Spanish, which is my mother tongue.
Where did you study?
So I went to Emmaus Bible College to study missions and theology. But it was there that I met my dear wife, Sarah, at the registration line. She came up and started talking to me in Spanish. So that was the immediate connection. So we had the romantic language going on right from the beginning. And again, she also, well, you can speak for yourself and where you grew up.
Yeah, so my family, though originally from the U.S., also when I was about 8 or 9 years old, moved to Mexico. My dad was a church planter and served there for many years, I think close to 30 years. They served in Mexico and were planting probably 3 or 4 churches. And then after that, they moved to Spain, and they served there as well. And so yes, the same as Jerry, my parents really instilled in me a real passion for Jesus and a real passion for missions and sharing Christ. So from a very young age, I knew that I wanted to serve God. I didn't know how or where, but I definitely loved Jesus and wanted to serve him.
So we met at Emmaus Bible College, and it was actually in that first semester that we became aware of, maybe for the first time, the need among the Muslim people in the rest of the world. You know, our whole focus had been South America, the Hispanic world, but that's where the Lord touched our hearts. It was a new avenue, and we were both very young, 18, and that was our first introduction to the rest of the world, as it were, especially the Kurdish people. For one reason or another, one of our missions professors kept emphasizing the great need among this greatest unreached people group, right, the Kurdish people. And so I began to do some research. Sarah as well. We became very good friends and did some research papers on that subject. And again, just over and over, the Lord kept touching us in that way. At the end of my second year, I actually went to Turkey by myself as a 19-year-old, similar to my dad, and wanted to see it for myself. I'd never been across the Pacific or the Atlantic in that case. And so I decided to go across to Turkey, meet some of these missionaries that I had corresponded with. And I had an opportunity to see Turkey for the first time and travel around. And again, just a greater sense and burden of, yes, I would love to come and serve and reach these people who are so unreached. And Turkey, especially of all the Muslim countries, it was the only open country, right?
When was the year?
This was 1998.
1998 is the year you visited Turkey.
Yes, I visited Turkey. And in fact, I ended up going to Diyarbakir. So I come to Diyarbakir with George Bristow, a good friend of ours, a mentor. And we went and met Pastor Ahmet. And they had recently purchased this old, torn up building across from the Meriamana Orthodox Church in the old city of Diyarbakir. And they had wanted to use it as a church building, but it was so decrepit, so old, they were asking George, who is an architect, can we rebuild this place, or should we just level it and start again? And George came and took one look at the building and said, no, you need to level it, and better to start on again, because this place is unusable. And I remember there standing in that church, and Ahmet said, so Jerry, what do you think? I was just a young man coming along with George, and would you like to come and help us? And I said, well, I'd love to come and help you. Wow. And he said, well, come on over, we'd love to have you. Well, little did I know that he says this to everybody who comes, right? But nobody comes. He said this hundreds of times to people, and nobody ever comes back. And so he was really just joking, So a few years later, when I showed up again, he was surprised, And I said, well, you invited me, right? And he said, well, I was kind of joking, but I'm really glad you came. So, of course, the rest of the story is we went back, and my wife and I by then were dating and were serious about getting married. But even before we got married, our goal and our purpose was set on Turkey, to come to serve the Lord in Turkey. Everybody joked about it, these two people that are still under 20 and yet already decided the rest of their life. But it had become that clear for us. There was an earthquake, of course, later in 1999, and we helped to support that. And by the end of 99, we were married at our Bible college. We didn't settle in the U.S. We just saved all our money because we wanted to go to Turkey. And so we went back to our home church in Washington State, and we approached our elders again, said, we've been talking about Turkey all these years. And they said, well, take a year to get used to marriage. And for our first anniversary, we went back to Turkey, this time together.
For my first time.
It was her first time there. And that was a real shock. We went in the winter, it was Ramadan, no food, right? We took a long bus ride from Izmir to Van, 24 hours. Yeah, wow. From the west to the east, 24 hours on that bus, and nobody's eating, no one's drinking. And it was cold, it was frigid up there, in the middle of winter. We ended up coming back to Diyarbakir. And at that point, I had told my wife, I said, we know the Lord wants us to come to Turkey. We don't know when, or when we will be ready for this. But I said, well, what if the Lord opens the doors and he says now, right? And she said, well, I'm not ready. I'm thinking of a couple years down the road, get ourselves prepared. She really didn't feel like that was the time. But she said to me,
I said, if God works in my heart, I'll be ready. And that's exactly what God did. By the end of our time in Diyarbakir, I had had a lot of prayer times with him, and God was really softening my heart and really giving me a passion and a love for the people of Diyarbakir. And so by the time we left, I still remember I was on the bus and I was crying because I didn't want to leave. That's how much I loved. And I was looking around at the land. The land outside of Diyarbakir is not beautiful at all. It's just rocks and desert. And I was looking at it, but I loved it so much. And so God really changed my heart and said, Sarah, you're going to go. Now. Now, like as soon as possible. So we both agreed that that's what God was
The challenge was that we needed to convince our elders that
we
these
ready.
20-year-old young couple was ready to go to the missions field, So we came back to our elders, and we firmly believed, based on Acts chapter 13, when Paul and Barnabas are sent out, that the Holy Spirit confirms his calling to those responsible. So even though we felt that call very deeply and we were ready to do that, we were also committed to the fact that if our elders who are spiritually responsible for us, if they didn't agree with that calling, if the Spirit did not confirm it to them as well, then we should not go. That's something that we've seen over and over throughout the years. People have come out to the mission field on a sense of calling, whether it's a sense of duty or emotion or whatever it is, genuine or otherwise. If they have come, but without the support of those who are responsible for them, and sooner or later they go back. It's unsustainable. And so we approached our church elders, and they had been, preparing us and guiding us throughout this whole process. And we said, listen, we feel like the time is now. Of course, their mouths were wide open, And they're staring at us like, now? Like, yeah, this summer. We really feel that God wants us to go. There's a place we can stay. There's a older couple that is willing to mentor us, a place we can learn the language and get a visa. And, everything had lined up so beautifully. But we said, we're committed to respecting your decision. And so we had 5 elders in our church, and they took a couple weeks to pray about this. And then finally we all got back together. And one by one, all 5 of these, who would listen to us, they said, really, we've seen your commitment from the beginning, 2 or 3 years now of praying for this, preparing for this, and now going and faithfully pursuing this vision. We believe this is God's will. But it came down to one last elder. And he had recently become an elder, Brother David. And Brother David says, I've always thought you guys were crazy. This is insane. Who do you think you are? You're going away to the other side of the world? Are you going to save the world? This is craziness, Why are you're young, 21 years old. He really thought this was really insane. But he said, I've been praying about this for the last couple weeks, and I just can't shake it that God is calling you. God is sending you. From a human perspective, this is insanity, but I believe that this is God's will. And for us, that was the confirmation we needed, because we had committed, unless all 5 of our elders are on board, we don't want to go on our own sense of emotion. We felt, we were very passionate about this, but we wanted to be sure it wasn't just our own feelings, but that it was God confirming that call. Now, there were plenty others who thought we were crazy in our church. We didn't have money. We didn't have all the things that you need typically, but we were committed now. We knew that God had confirmed that call. And so we began to just trust Him, and we got rid of everything, and God began to provide from places we didn't even know, and we had enough for a ticket, and then we moved on out to Izmir.
How long it took after you submit your proposal to the church?
About 8 months.
8 months, yeah.
Yeah. So by August, we were back in Turkey. And, we came to Turkey. And one of the things that we did, I think, was really wise in retrospect. We took the model of Timothy. He was a young, passionate, missionary who wanted to serve, but he was careful to work under the Apostle Paul. Sure. And to be taken under his wing and to learn from him. And so, being that we were very young, we went to Turkey and we began to work under an older couple who were mentors to us, and we spent a whole year learning the language, and that was really key. Both of us are MKs, and we've grown up in the middle, in the mission field, and we've often seen missionaries who have been there 15, 20 years and still struggling with the language.
That's right.
And it becomes an embarrassment for them, not to mention, I think, a stumbling block to others. And so we were committed. If we're going to be in this country, we're going to call it home. Mm-hmm. This is going to be our home. Our kids are going to be born and raised here, and they're going to love it. And we want to learn this language just like the locals. So we're going to do whatever we need to do to make that happen.
How was it?
Well, we worked on it really hard. It was difficult at the beginning, but Jerry especially is very gifted with languages, and I think I did pretty well as well.
She was pregnant with our first daughter and still did great.
And so by 1 year, after 1 year, we had studied and committed a whole year just to language. And so we really embraced the language, and that was a good decision, I think.
It's so important because so often in missions, it's easy to learn just enough to get by and to begin ministering, but not really perfect it. And I think that's a mistake we can make. We really need to fully commit. And in the case of Turkish, we got there and we took it on as a full job. I saw myself being supported by the local church to be here, so I'm going to put in 8 hours a day. And so that meant, going to university, taking my classes, coming home, taking my vocabulary list seriously, going out to neighbors, meeting people, and at least 8 hours a day of focusing on that language. And if I was not in the mission field, I'd be here with an 8-hour job, right? So I need to really give it everything I've got. And the Lord honored that, and we got enough in that first year where we could really communicate. Of course, you never have it entirely. You're always learning more, right? Sure. But after, about 10 months in Izmir, our calling from the beginning had been the southeast. And so this is when we loaded everything up in an old watermelon truck. My wife asked me, do you think this is going to make it? And I said, well, I hope so. And we headed out to southeastern Turkey, to Diyarbakir, the largest city in eastern Turkey, mainly a Kurdish population, and showed up to see Ahmet and the elders there. And by now we had communicated, and he knew we were coming, of course. But they were delighted to have us, and we were delighted to be there. And again, we put ourselves under their leadership. We said, we're here to serve you and to do what you feel the local church needs. Initially, when we came to Turkey, we came with the mentality that many of us have from the West of, I'm going to come and plant a church. Well, we've realized over time just how short-sighted that can be, not to mention a little bit bigoted. Who are we to think that we know how to do it? There's local believers there that have been working on this for decades and are struggling to do this. What makes me think I can just jump out of Bible college and come and do it, right? Thankfully, we got some good advice from some older workers and came and submitted ourselves to the local leaders and said, we want to serve you. We want to work under you. And it offered us really good covering. It offered us a good opportunity to continue to mature and grow in our language skills and our culture acquisition, and also just spiritually in every area. And so it was a really sweet time. About 12 years we served in Diyarbakir. By the end, I was an elder along with them, serving in the local church. But really, we grew up in that church and were mentored by these older pastors, Ahmet and Cengiz, and saw just a real fruitful season in Diyarbakir during those years. Saw the church go from a small home group to an established church building of 70, 80 believers on a regular Sunday, and multiplying and growing and starting new churches along with them. So the vision that we acquired over time was not, instead of us, we're going to go plant a church, let's come and plant the church with the local church. Let's work together towards a common goal. Let's give that vision on to them. Because at the end of the day, we don't know how long we will be able to stay. And as it turned out, we only had 12 years there, which was a joy. Every day of that was a great privilege for us.
Year 2012, we have a prayer meeting in Ankara, and I have a chance to invite you as a guest speaker. And in the meeting, prayer meeting, I remember that it's more than close to 100 Turkish people there, and everyone say they thought you are Turkish. So I'm so glad to hear that. They don't feel the difference from your sermon and the preaching and the report. I'm so glad that, and you have experience to took care of the earthquake around the Van. I remember your report. Your report say that just give them bread instead of you give them a bread and you ask them accept Jesus. You suggested don't do that. You just give them a bread.
Just the act of showing them love and sharing. It was really important that we don't have strings attached to our to whatever humanitarian aid we give people. If we're saying, we'll give you bread if you will take also my faith, then that's not really fair. And I think it gives a wrong impression that we are going to continue to support them if they become Christians. And that's not true, and that's not helpful. So we wanted just to very simply love them. And they already know you're a Christian if you're a foreigner. And just that very act, especially with no strings attached, I think speaks volumes in and of itself. And it was a beautiful thing to be able to serve alongside the local church, under the auspices of the local church there in Van for that time. And we did this, in a number of other places as well. In Bingöl, there was an earthquake years earlier. And whenever there are practical needs like this, later on with refugees, a great opportunity to just serve in the name of Jesus.
No, it is important. About the earthquake in Van, have you ever a chance to involve with Jerry?
Oh, when the earthquake happened? No, I did not go up there.
Okay. But you have a chance to invite the church in Van members, a white family, or another church members, and Yeah,
they came and visited us, and we were very involved by just the support from afar, but I had really little kids at that point, so my little kids were they were very small, so it was very hard for me to leave home at that point.
That's right. Okay. Wonderful. You just mentioned few ministries in Turkey, and tell me about the ministry in Turkey before you leave.
Well, you know, God was working on many different levels. We were on the southeastern corner, but as Ahmed Abi would always say, he would say that God's field is very big. You know, we all work in a different corner of that field, but we're all working for the same master, and he is the owner of the harvest. And so we were just privileged to see the church blossom in those years. It was years when the church had more freedom. You know, Erdogan today, we think of him as, you know, anti-Christian and always causing trouble and all the rest. But in the early years, he was actually giving a lot of freedom to Christians and to groups, because he also wanted that freedom for his Muslim groups. And so for the first few years, we benefited greatly. Many churches were opened across the country, publicly ministering and worshiping. Many people began to openly, you know, identify with Christianity by changing their ID. There were many ministries that were set up. I remember we had a big conference in which out of that came the prayer ministry, and out of that came youth ministry, which is what I spearheaded. The youth ministry, and now they're having regular conferences and youth training seminars. Out of that also, of course, there's been a very strong push to do children's ministry, and that's been very successful. Over 30 years, I think now, of strong children's ministry across the country. What started as one main camp in Ankara now is 5 or 6 camps across Turkey. You know, so we've seen that church and that ministry multiply. We've seen the church, you know, many of the churches in the southeast and Diyarbakir and Mardin especially, because they're open venues, people come regularly and just want to get a Bible, get a New Testament. So in Mardin, for example, you might get 100, 200 people a day on an average, just coming in, wanting a book, wanting a Bible. And this is where I got involved in writing. And so I began to write a lot of books and publish these and make them available to people for free. Also a lot of social media and internet online ministries, TV ministries began to develop, and local pastors, myself included, were now had the courage to get on the camera and openly profess their faith. And again, the Lord has used this to spread the gospel across all of Turkey. So at every level, whether it's youth ministry, children's ministry, online ministry, women's ministry as well, the Turkish church has become really very strong, and it's been a beautiful thing to see that blossom and grow.
Thank you. Sarah, when you were in Diyarbakir, you began to involve the women's ministry. And you have a wonderful ministry in North Cyprus as well. Can you tell us a little bit about women's ministry in Turkey?
Yeah, so one of the biggest issues in Turkey, of course, is that women do not have as many rights, and especially women who come from Muslim backgrounds. They've been really, I guess, put down their whole life. They've always felt like they're not good enough, and because women in Turkey, especially in the southeast even more, they've really been oppressed over the years. So a lot of my vision and my heart was always to reach out to the broken women, and I began to do that more than anything from my home in Diyarbakir. I would have women over. I met a lot of women. Women would suddenly just want to come and talk with me, and I was able to pray with a lot of women over the years who were Muslims, but they also knew that they could trust me, and they also believed that praying for them in Jesus' name, they saw differences, and so they really wanted prayer. So that's what I began to do while I was there. Yeah.
When you do the women's ministry, especially hearing their story, and you have tell them your story with the Bible, your ability of the language does really help at the point, I think.
Of course, yeah. It was very important that I had language. I'm really thankful I had a really good grasp of Turkish so that I could share with the women, and so that I could understand the vocabulary that they were using, and also be able to identify and empathize with a vocabulary that they also understood. So it was really important.
You are not 50 yet, a little over 40s, and I have two suggestions. Who has a heart for the Lord, and especially young people. And why don't you encourage them? What is your life you choose for the Lord for last 20 plus years? And what is the message for the next young generation here in America and also over the world? Same question for Sarah.
Do you have an answer?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I must say, you know, I don't regret for once, you know, the decision we made to commit our life to Jesus and to walk after him, to follow him. It's been an adventure every step of the way. There's been high points, there's been low points. There was the day we buried 3 friends in Malatya, you know, martyred for Christ. But we can also look back and see churches that have been established, the gospel has gone out, thousands of Bibles and New Testaments distributed, and so many lives that are transformed, and now have the joy of seeing these Afghan and Yazidi girls have a new life. There's nothing like it. You know, it's just such a joy to know that what you're doing has eternal value. And so I don't regret it for one moment. I do see that it's difficult in today's modern age, so many competing alliances and allegiances in our lives, and yet there's nothing as amazing and exciting as following Jesus and letting him use you to transform this world for good, and to do you know, create genuine, positive, eternal, lasting change in the lives of others. And it changes you, of course. It expands you as an individual and enriches your life. And even though it's been maybe challenging for us as a couple to live overseas, for our children to be growing up overseas, at the end of the day, we wouldn't regret it. We wouldn't change anything for a moment. And the only thing we regret is not being more passionate for Christ. We regret not following him even closer, not praying more, not being more you know, committed to him and his word. But everything that we've done in his cause has been to our great joy and benefit, and we've privileged to do so.
Wonderful. Sarah.
I would tell young women and young men that it's never too late to say yes to Jesus, yes to what he actually has called them to do. For me, you know, saying yes each time to God's calling in my life, I've never regretted it. When I said yes to Turkey, when I said yes to North Cyprus, when I said yes to Iraq and Afghanistan and all these places that, for a woman like me, I was very shy. I was not incredibly gifted in speaking, maybe. I had a lot of insecurities, but I wanted to show Jesus' love to others. And I knew that's all, if I could only do that, that's all I wanted to do. And so I would just encourage the young people to say, you know, just say yes and see what God's going to do in their life. Because it can be hard, but it's so much more exciting to see him working through us when we are just his vessels. It's a beautiful thing.
Wonderful. Oh, when I'm thinking about you, Jerry, you are the very weird American.
Yeah.
Because you were born in Bolivia and grew up there until age 18, and come to America only a few years.
Yeah.
And moved to Turkey and North Cyprus. Now you are 48, and you spent only 4 years in America. But God is using you wonderful way. Even you give up comfort life in America, but God is using you in God's field.
Well, I'm only 43, but
Sorry.
but you know, I think one of the great things to learn in life is, obviously we're all unique, and God can use our uniqueness. He can leverage all of that for his kingdom, for his glory. The fact that I have this background of having grown up as a MK in South America has been a great benefit to me, having another language, having another culture. I've never felt like I've had to leave anything because I have everything to gain. You know, I've never missed life in the United States. You know, and as much as I love and miss my culture in Bolivia, in a way, I've fallen in love with Turkey and all that has to offer. You know, so everything that God has done in my life, the background, the history, all the unique and the quirkiness, and God uses all those things in interesting ways. He weaves it together, and so I think it's just a joy to allow Him to fit us in. We're like a puzzle piece, and there's a unique place where we can all be used of Him. And so there's, it might seem weird for someone, you know, that I've left America. I feel like I've not left anything. I've just gained so much by following Christ and allowing Him to use me in these interesting and amazing ways. It's really all His doing. Yeah.
Sarah, to compare with your friends in America, your life is very different from their life and the life they choose. What you say?
Well, I'm glad I chose what I did. I know that much. You know, I love my friends in America. I'm so much like Jerry that, you know, I left America when I was 8 years old, and I didn't come back until I was 18, and then I left after a few years again. So when I come to America, I don't necessarily feel like I fit in anyway. So a lot of things are strange for me here. But at the same time, something that I value about America is how they faithfully prayed for me and my family, how they faithfully support us, how they faithfully are behind us. And whenever we come back, they embrace us and love us. And that makes us feel that we're not forgotten, because it can be lonely on the field. I mean, that is one thing, it can be lonely. In terms, their life is very different. I mean, I have two sisters here also, and my brother, and their life is very different from mine. But they love Jesus, and they pray for me. And that's what we have in common, our love for the Lord.
Wonderful, wonderful. Finally, let's share your prayer request for your family and the ministry.
Yeah. Go ahead. Well, we have, obviously, we're taking care of all these Afghan girls now. And we're going to add another 8 or 10 girls. And so we're just praying God will keep providing for them and protect them and bring them over safely, and that they will come to know Him. That's our real greatest desire for them. We want to continue to serve the local church effectively. We want to see local leaders raised up in a place like Cyprus, where there's such a turnaround of people regularly. We want to see some local families established as local leaders there. And just for continued unity and working together with different people in that city.
I know you are in the middle of a trip to cross the country, and you end up by Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, we pray God will bless you at this trip, and you go back to North Cyprus. You could invite us.
Yes, of course.
For your ministry.
You're very welcome to come. We'd love to have you.
Wonderful.
We'd love to have you.
All right. Thank you for your time, Sarah and Jerry. And we miss you a long time, but I'm so glad to see you here in Anaheim.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
네, 오늘 제리 사라 매틱스 가정을 통해서 하나님께서 볼리비아와 그리고 멕시코, 터키까지 이르러 하나님께서 이 가정들을 계속해서 이끄시면서 하나님의 역사에 동참시켜 주시는 놀라운 간증들을 듣게 하시니 감사합니다. 오늘날에도 여전히 많은 선교사님들이 추방을 당하고 계시는 실정 우리가 다 보고받고 있죠. 그러나 추방 이후에 하나님께서 또 입체적인 사역을 통해서 전 열방의 선교사님들을 다른 국가로 이동시키시거나 또는 다른 지역에서 하나님의 새로운 사역들을 일으키시는 것들을 보면서 하나님은 정말 우리들의 모든 사역의 주권, 지역의 주권도 붙드시는 분이신 것을 더욱더 믿고 확신하게 됩니다. 우리가 함께 오늘 제리 사라 매틱스 가정을 위해서 합심해서 기도해 주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 또 이어서 오늘 하나님의 나라가 온 열방과 모든 민족 가운데 능력으로 임하고 터키 이슬람권 교회와 동역자 성도들을 위한 기도, 그리고 아르만지 캄닌 사역자, 샤로 사디카 사역자 가정, 한인 외국인 선교사 가정과 기도 동역자 교회를 위한 기도까지 우리 이 말씀을 기억하시면서 존귀하신 주님의 이름 한 번 부르시고 오늘 뜨겁게 우리 기도를 올려드리기를 원합니다. 주님. 하나님 오늘 감사합니다. 주님 오늘 사라, 제리, 매틱스 가정을 통하여서 놀랍게 역사하신 하나님의 보고를 듣게 하시니 감사합니다. 하나님 추방이 끝이 아니라 추방을 통하여 또 다른 사역지가 열리고 그 사역지를 통하여서 하나님 또 하나님의 날이 주님의 오심을 함께 기도하고 또 그 사역에 동참할 수 있는 은혜를 허락하시니 감사합니다. 하나님의 추수가 진행되는 터키와 중동, 이슬람권에 하나님의 일을 할 일꾼들을 보내주십시오. 마지막 시대 하나님의 부르심에 예스라고 순종하는 세대들을 일으켜 주십시오. 예수 그리스도에 관심을 갖는 수많은 복음과 신자 무슬림들을 사랑하고 그들에게 복음을 설명하고 그들과 함께할 일꾼들을 세워 주십시오. 아니 터키 정부가 외국인 사역자들을 계속 추방하고 있습니다. 열방의 교회가 우리 주님의 추수의 때에 동역할 수 있는 주님 편에 선 새로운 길이 찾아지도록 지혜를 열어 주십시오. 창조적인 사역과 입체적인 사역들이 열려져서 하나님 우리가 막혔을 때에 주님이 일하실 때라는 확신에 거하여 우리가 쉬지 않게 하여 주시기를 기도합니다. 하나님 터키 땅과 이슬람 교회의 지역 교회의 새로운 패러다임 사고방식과 이해력을 주셔서 주님이 여전히 일하시고 우리를 써주셔서 하나님 아직도 주님이 많은 영혼들을 얻기 위해 쉬지 않으심을 우리가 보기를 원합니다. 하나님의 나라가 온 열방과 모든 민족 가운데 능력으로 임하며 기도합니다. 주님 아버지의 뜻이 하늘에서 이루어진 것처럼 이 땅 위에도 임하실 때까지 하는 땅끝 모든 종족에게 주의 뜻이 선포되게 하여 주시옵소서. 여호와 이름에 합당한 영광과 존귀가 열방의 모든 민족으로 하여금 올려지게 하여 주시고 주님의 통치가 이 땅에 이루어질지어다. 하나님의 나라를 침노할 하나님의 군대가 터키, 아프간, 이란, 이라크, 시리아, 아르메니아, 이집트 교회와 중동 국가 가운데 열려질지어다. 한국과 세계 한인 디아스포라 교회 가운데 새벽의 새 같은 주의 청년들처럼 일어날지어다. 개인과 가정, 교회 공동체에서 온전한 예배와 기도가 회복되게 하십시오. 하나님의 나라와 기쁨과 능력을 체험하며 각자에게 주신 거룩한 소명을 발견하며 사명을 감당하는 성령의 역사가 일어나게 하여 주시옵소서. 하나님의 나라가 어둠의 주관자들과 하늘의 악한 영들의 모든 계획을 파하시게 하여 주시고 하나님 교회를 통하여 주님의 신부된 교회를 통하여 이 땅에 아버지의 역사를 이루십시오. 정치와 사회가 불안정한 터키 땅 가운데 하나님 특별히 난민들이 있는 그 땅 가운데 진리를 향한 목마름으로 더욱 부어주셔서 복음을 듣고 예수 그리스도를 믿는 영적 대각성 운동이 일어나게 하여 주시옵소서. 튀르키예 및 이슬람권 교회와 목회자들, 동역자들과 성도를 위해서 기도합니다. 주님 아직도 복음이 전파되지 않는 모든 지역으로 흩어져 나가는 현지 사역자들이 핍박과 고난을 두려워하지 않고 담대히 복음을 전하며 그들을 통하여 하나님의 영광을 나타내시옵소서. 현지 사역자들이 이슬람 종교를 통해 역사하는 어둠의 영, 미혹의 영, 거짓의 영, 두려움의 영, 폭력의 영들을 우리 주 예수 그리스도의 이름으로 묶고 어둠과 사망의 그들 가운데 방황하는 이 영혼들을 자유케 하며 신원의 날을 선포할 아버지의 말씀이 떨어져 불이 붙을지어다. 복음을 부끄러워하지 아니하고 모든 믿는 자들에게 구원을 주시는 우리 아버지의 능력과 권세와 권능을 경험하는 현지 사역자들이 되게 하사 하나님 아버지께서 역사하시는 말씀에 흥황함으로 복음이 더욱더 물밀듯 전달될 것입니다. 그리스도의 좋은 군사로 복음의 고난에 참여함으로 하나님을 기쁘시게 하며 승리의 면류관을 얻기까지 각자의 맡은 부르심의 목과 달려갈 길을 끝까지 완주하는 충성스러운 일꾼들이 되게 하시고 충성스러운 일꾼이 자라나게 하여 주십시오. 그리스도의 보혈로 사역자들의 삶과 가정을 덮어주시고 핍박과 환난과 어둠의 악한 영들의 공격과 방해에서 보호해 주시고 어떤 상함과 해를 잊지 않도록 주여 안전하게 이끌어 주십시오. 매일의 영적 전쟁에서 우리 주 예수 그리스도의 이름으로 사단의 머리를 꺾으며 우리 주님의 역사와 권능의 역사를 아버지 그 땅 가운데 이뤄내게 하는 사역자들의 기도 모임이 더욱더 세워지게 하여 주시옵소서. 이스탄불의 아르만지 캄린 사역자의 가정을 올려드립니다. 이티아와 아론을 올려드립니다. 사역을 위해 가지안테베에 오는 사람들의 여행 허가가 잘 나올 수 있도록 인도하시고 기본 제자 과정을 통해 준비하는 10명의 새로운 성도와 세례반에 참여하는 15명의 새신자들을 위한 모든 과정 가운데 성령님 크신 은총을 베풀어 주십시오. 새 교회를 개척할 장소와 건물이 마련되게 하시고 학예 세미나에 필요한 모든 것을 공급하시고 아르만지와 가족이 영육간에 강건하게 하셔서 주신 사명을 능히 감당할 수 있도록 지혜와 능력과 하나님의 모든 재정의 어려움 속에서 건지십시오. 샤로와 샤디카 가정을 올려드립니다. 네셋과 하디프를 올려드립니다. 하나님, 이 교회에 세워진 예배팀에 음악교사를 보내십시오. 16세에서 23세의 청소년 및 청년들을 위한 사역을 통하여 이들이 어둠의 행위와 어둠에 갇혀있는 모든 옷을 벗고 이제 그리스도의 옷을 입는 하나님의 사역들과 하나님의 성령의 기름 부음의 사역이 펼쳐질지어다. 불우이웃을 위한 의료봉사를 통해 병든 자를 돕게 하시고 섬김과 사랑을 통해 복음을 전하십시오. 15명의 영혼들에게 하나님의 성령의 크신 은총을 더하여 주셔서 세례가 잘 거행되고 하나님 이들을 통하여 믿는 자들에 대한 하나님의 따르는 표적과 은혜와 기사와 능력과 사랑이 넘쳐날지어다. 하나님, 특별히 사료 사역자 가정에 터키 시민권이 잘 나올 수 있도록 인도하여 주시고, 특별히 척추 문제로 고통 중에 있는 사료 사역자에게 하나님의 초자연적인 치유가, 병을 손을 얹는 즉 병을 나으리라 하시는 아버지의 이적의 역사가 일어날지어다. 그리하여서 우리 하나님 영광 받으시며 주님의 말씀이 더욱더 왕성하게 역사되어지는 그 표적을 통하여 함께 하신 하나님의 성령의 가르침과 역사가 있을지어다. 한인 외국인 선교사와 가정, 기독교역자와 교회를 올려드립니다. 하나님, 이 땅에서 현지에서 사역하는 하나님 주님의 사역자들을 인도하여 주십시오. 그리스도의 보혈로 덮으시고 끝까지 아버지께서 맡겨주신 그 몫을 감당하며 아버지께 달려나가며 사명을 끝까지 완주하는 인도가 있게 하십시오. 이스탄불, 안디옥, 조지아 바투미, 이라크 쪽, 이집트 카이로, 그리스 아테네, 요르단 암만, 아르메니아 예레반에서 일어나는 8개 M센터의 선교사님들의 가정을 보호하시고 이 M센터를 통하여 다양하고 창조적인 사역이 일어나게 하여 주시고 하늘의 지혜와 하늘의 전략을 주셔서 특별히 팀 멤버들이 재정으로 어려움이 없도록 보호하시는 은혜가 더해지게 하여 주시옵소서. SWM 코리아와 USA 운영이사 교회들이 열방을 향한 선교 사명을 잘 감당할 수 있도록 부흥의 역사가 계속해서 일어나여 성령으로 충만케 하여 주십시오. 하나님의 영광과 나라와 의를 구하는 마지막 다음 세대가 가정과 교회와 거리에서, 일터에서, 학교에서 일어나게 하사 마지막 때를 위하여 주님께 헌신하며 하나님 주님의 피 묻은 복음을 가지며 재림의 복음을 가지며 주님 오실 그 나라를 꿈꾸며 하나님이 택하시고 사용하시는 귀한 세대가 일어날지어다. 여호와 라파 되신 하나님, 치유의 강선을 발하여 주셔서 육체적인 질병과 연약함 가운데 있는 연합기도자들에게 임하여 주십시오. 이은옥 간사님, 박창간 집사님, 송민경 집사님, 이동우 권사님, 김토성 선교사님, 김은경 선교사님, 김은지 집사님, 이창우 집사님, 조한진 자매님, 강영창 장로님, 박민미 권사님, 오영 권사님, 그레이스 김 선생님, 김조리 전도사님, 김은영 팀장님에게 주의 은혜가 덮여서 하나님 아버지께서 이 가정을 온전히 치유하는 역사를 맛보게 하여 주시옵소서. 그렇게 하실 주님을 찬양합니다. 오늘은 미전도 무슬림 종족을 위한 기도, 소말리아의 시족 라한웨이족을 위해서 기도할 것입니다. 라한웨이족은 소말리아에서 중요하고 영향력 있는 시족입니다. 이들을 통해서 특별히 정치 경제 상황은 과거 식민 세력에 대항하여 싸웠고 소말리아 내 연방제를 처음으로 주장하며 정치적인 세력을 주장한 종족입니다. 그리고 자신들의 자치권을 지키기 위해서 라한의 반군으로 알려진 군사 조직을 만들 정도였습니다. 이들의 영적 상황은 순니파 무슬림이고 소말리아는 15세기경에 이슬람을 받아들였지만 가족과 시족의 정체성을 이슬람의 가르침보다 더 중요하게 여기는 민족입니다. 알샤바브 같은 테러리스트 집단을 활발하게 지원하고 있고요. 현재 그들의 공동체에는 극소수의 그리스도인인 것으로 알려져 있다고 합니다. 우리가 라한웨이족을 위해서 기도하실 때 특별히 이 종족 가운데 0.01%를 믿고 있는 그리스도인들 가운데 특별히 성령의 가르침과 은사가 더 있게 하셔서 하나님 이들을 통하여서 복음 전도가 이 라한웨이족에게 더욱더 흘러갈 수 있도록 함께 기도해 주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 이어서 2022년 사역과 프로젝트를 위해서 그리고 마지막으로 마지막 때 영적 대추수와 주님을 예비하는 주님의 재림을 예비하는 기도까지 우리 함께 힘내셔서 주님의 이름 한 번 더 부르짖고 함께 기도하시겠습니다. 주님, 하나님 아버지, 소말리아의 시족 가레인을 위해서 기도합니다. 하나님 아버지, 이 라한웨이족을 위해서 올려드릴 때에 하나님 아버지, 라한웨이족 가운데에
하나님 주님의 문을 열어주셔서 평화의 사람들을 예비하여 주시고 하나님 이들의 영적인 굶주림을 느끼고 주님께로 향하여 갈 수 있도록 인도하여 주십시오. 하나님 이 민족 가운데 예수 안에서 은혜와 평안을 찾게 하시며 아버지의 이름이 전달되게 하여 주십시오. 예수 영화 및 복음자료들이 하나님 라하네이족에게 전달되게 하십시오. 그리스도의 대사들을 환영할 평화의 사람들을 예비하십시오. 이 라하네이족이 특별히 테러리스트 집단을 활발하게 지원하고 있다고 합니다. 하나님 아버지 전쟁에 대한 시름과 소말리아에 있는 모든 전쟁의 끝이도록 이 라하네이족을 사용하여 주시기를 간절히 구하며 이 종족을 올려드립니다. 하나님 아버지 2022년 사역과 프로젝트를 위해서 올려드립니다. 쿠르스탄 지역의 시리아 난민, 예지니 난민, 어린이 청소를 위한 영어 캠프를 하나님의 크신 애 가운데 감당케 하시니 감사합니다. 캠프에 참여한 350명의 청소년 어린이들이 하나님의 은혜와 사랑 안에서 하나님의 자녀로 잘 양육되게 하여 주시옵소서. 현지 복음전도자, 교회 개척자들을 양성하기 위한 모든 신학공부 목회훈련 과정 가운데 역사하셔서 현지 교회가 더욱더 부흥하도록 은혜 내려 주시옵소서. 하나님 SWM 사역을 통하여 써주셔서 특별히 하나님의 청년들을 깨우는 사역이 일어나게 하여 주시옵소서. 이기 청년 선교사 장엽세 평재님, 단미선 자매님, 이사라 자매님이 영육간에 강건하게 하여 주시고 지금 많이 아픈 가운데 있는데 주님 한 분 한 분마다 치유하여 주십시오. 하나님 이스탄불 램센터 팀과 연합을 통하여서 아버지 이 중동 땅 위에 하나님이 하실 일들을 맘껏 속행하십시오. 일개 청년 선교사 가운데 오상준 형제와 유소영 자매가 장기 선교사로 헌신했습니다. 하나님 교회와 기도와 재정 후원자들이 연결되는 은혜가 있게 하여 주십시오. 터키 교회와 난민교회 사역, BTS 사역, SWM 사역 등 다목적 사역을 위한 생명수재단의 박흑부 건물을 위한 아버지 일들이 순조롭게 진행되게 하여 주십시오. 5차 교회개척 리서치 트립이 이제 얼마 남지 않았습니다. 준비하는 모든 과정 가운데 성령의 기름을 부으셔서 참여할 자들이 모여지게 하여 주십시오. 하나님 특별히 저에게 허락하신 연합 중보기도 모임을 사용하여 주셔서 주님이 오실 때까지 이 기도가 불과 같이 쓰임받게 하여 주시옵소서. 하나님 마지막 때 영적 대추수와 주님의 재림을 예비하며 기도합니다. 기후변화로 인해서 각 대륙이 홍수와 폭염과 가뭄으로 고통받고 있습니다. 이들에게 하나님 아버지 자비와 은혜를 베풀어 주시고 하나님 기후의 심각성을 깨달아 아버지 도움을 필요한 모든 자들에게 재정의 도움과 하나님 나라의 도움이 잘 펼쳐질 수 있도록 일해 주십시오. 우크라이나로 해서 기도합니다. 전쟁이 장기화되고 있습니다. 하나님께서 개입하셔서 속히 전쟁이 끝쳐지고 주님의 위로가 필요합니다. 교회들을 통하여 하나님의 성도들을 통하여 이 땅에 굶어 죽고 아프고 전쟁으로 상처받은 모든 아픔들을 치유하도록 교회를 써주십시오. 이스라엘로 해서 기도합니다. 이스라엘과 아랍 국가와 민족들 가운데 서로를 향한 미움과 증오, 분노와 테러를 일으키는 악한 영들의 계획을 파하시고 온전한 화해와 평화가 이루어질지어다. 미국을 위해서 기도합니다. 미국의 바이든 대통령과 각계 지도자들이 하나님을 두려워하게 하여 주시고 물질주의와 황금만능주의로 타락하는 각계 지도자들과 교회 가운데 회개의 물결이 일어나서 다시 한번 미국에 아버지 주님이 오실 날들을 위한 부흥운동을 열어 주시옵소서. 북한을 올려드립니다. 북한의 김정은 정권이 속히 무너질지어다. 정치적인 핍박과 경제적 고통, 극심한 심령 난 가운데 있는 북한 동포들을 기억하여 주셔서 특별히 지하교회 성도들이 눈물로 기도하는 그 기도를 응답하여 주시옵소서. 한국을 위해서 기도합니다. 한국교회 다시 한번 뜨거운 성령의 불길을 내려주셔서 마지막 때에 맡겨주신 사명을 능히 감당하며 한국 청년들이 다시 한번 사명자로 일어나 정치와 사회와 경제와 문화와 미디어와 교육면에 하나님 모든 엔터테인먼트에 하나님의 사람들을 보내셔서 하나님 이 땅에 하나님이 오실 아버지 이야기들이 더욱더 많아지도록 이들을 써주십시오. 특별히 갑작스러운 홍수 피해로 고통받는 이들에게 주님의 위로와 도우심을 열어주십시오. 하나님 주님의 재림을 예비하며 기도합니다. 이 막인의 충만한 수가 채워지기까지 주님의 말씀이 속히 성취되어 마지막 때에 징조가 일어나는 것으로 두려워하지 말며 우리가 더욱 깨어 기도하며 아버지 마라나타 주님 오실 때까지 그가 오시고 싶은 나라가 이 땅에 성취될 때까지 우리의 영혼들이 기도하기를 쉬지하며 교회가 기도하기를 쉬지 아니하며 우리의 기도 모임이 아버지 오심을 간구하며 기도하는 것을 쉬지 않는 은혜를 더욱더 부어 주시옵소서. 우리 주님을 사랑합니다. 감사합니다.
우리 시간 결단 찬양으로 주님 다시 오실 때까지 우리 함께 찬양하시고 기도하시고 연합기도회를 마치도록 하겠습니다. 주님
일어나 달려가리라. 주의 영광 온 땅 덮을 때 나는 일어나 노래하리. 내 사모하는 주님 온 세상 구주시라. 내 사모하는 주님 영광의 왕이시라. 주님 다시 오실 때까지, 주님 다시 오실 때까지 나는 일어나 달려가리라. 주의 영광 온 땅 덮을 때 나는 일어나 노래하리. 내 사모하는 주님 온 세상 구주시라. 내 사모하는 주님 영광의 왕이시라. 영광의 왕 우리 주 예수님 다시 오실 때까지 하나님, 저희가 하는 이 기도가 쉬지 말게 하여 주십시오. 하나님, 우리의 소업이 끝날 때까지 하나님 주님의 오심을 간구하며 사랑하게 하여 주십시오. 하나님, 오늘 선교사님 말씀처럼 하나님, 우리가 추방을 당해도, 우리의 거처가 위협을 당해도, 하나님, 우리에게 온갖 공격이 우리를 휘몰아친다 할지라도 아버지께서 말씀하신 그 부르심의 소명과 복음을 향한 열정들의 불은 꺼지지 않게 하여 주시고, 아버지 주님의 손과 발 되어 끝까지 우리의 사명과 우리의 부르심과 우리의 목과 우리의 달려갈 길을 완주하는 모든 기도 동역자 여러분 되게 하여 주십시오. 이 시간 함께 우리에게 기도하게 하신 모든 영광을 주님께 올려드리며 살아계신 예수 그리스도의 이름으로 기도하옵나이다. 아멘. 감사합니다. 함께하신 기도 동역자 여러분께 감사 인사드립니다. 우리 다음 시간에 또 다시 만나 뵙도록 하겠습니다.
온 세상의 소망 되신 주님을 찬양합시다. 예수 열방의 소망, 예수 우리의 위로자. 주는 온 땅의 영원한 소망, 예수 어둠 속의 빛, 예수 변함없는 진리. 주는 온 땅에 빛이 되어 주님만이 소망이요 변함없는 반석이라 주님만이 온 세상을 비추시네 또 죽음에서 부활하신 우리 구주 영광의 왕 주를 믿는 모든 자의 소망 되신 주를 믿네 주를 믿네 주를 믿네
예수의 이름은
예수의 이름은
세상의 소망이요
세상의 소망이요 예수의